Hello, my name is Michael Garrick, and this is PoppinCulture Video Game Reviews. My guest today is comedian, musician, cat owner, and computer programmer, the great, the funny Evan Pitfield.
Hey man, what's going on?
Man, thank you so much for coming on, man.
Thank you for having me, sir.
Before we get into it, this will be a 100% spoiler review. The game that we'll be spoiling is Street of Rage 4. Great game. Great game. Um, But before we get into the game, I would like to talk about Street of Rage 1, 2, and 3.
Yep.
Um, Evan knows a little bit more about the history than I do. Can you tell them a little brief history?
I can. So I'm trying to pull up a timeline here because I don't want to get this wrong. So the very first game was just called Streets of Rage. It didn't have like the number one in it or anything like that. But it was developed for the Sega Genesis or the Sega Mega Drive if you're in Europe. And this one came out in 1991. So I was born in '89 and I was alive, but I guess I was just approaching 2 years old, and I didn't exactly have um, video games when I was 2 years old. So then Streets of Rage 2 came out, and I believe Streets of Rage 2 came out in 1992, if my math is correct. And Streets of Rage 2 is the first Streets of Rage that I played. So it came out in '92 for North America, and then in Japan and Europe it came out in '93. Now, Streets of Rage 2 is a lot of people, including myself, would argue that it's the best one out of the four, but we can get into that in a second. So then Streets of Rage 3, and there's a reason I'm doing this. I promise I'm not just being boring, although I probably am. I didn't delete the two, so I just Googled Streets of Rage 23. So let me do that again. Streets of Rage 3 came out in '94. And so now what's special is that Streets of Rage 4 came out last year in 2020. Right? So it's literally a 26-year gap, which is insane. So this is important to me because there's a lot of games that are doing that nowadays. Like we're on modern console platforms, right? We got like PS5 and Xbox One SX or whatever letters they have, and then the Nintendo Switch. And so like you see this a lot now where they're like bringing back retro series, or they're like polishing up an old game and making it look new, or even just directly porting old games to the new console. And like very similar to movies, they have the same inherent risk where it's like, oh crap, I hope this is going to be as good as everyone remembers. There's like a huge opportunity to mess that up, and they didn't. They actually, like Streets of Rage 4 is amazing. For me personally, it's everything I ever hoped of and better. And so I was super excited to use Streets of Rage 4 for this talk. And then a quick nerd detour. I actually own all
Show,
of the four Streets of Rage. Yeah, I got them. I got them right
show,
here. So
let the haters see.
here's the first one ever. This is Streets of Rage 1. It's way more interesting than my face. You got to open it up. Back in the day, they had cartridges. Do you remember cartridges?
Yeah, you still got it in the plastic.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, no, that's like an aftermarket plastic protector because I'm trying to preserve it for when I'm inevitably single. I have stuff to read, on the toilet. So that was Streets of Rage 1.
That was some cool artwork too. That was nice artwork.
It was actually. They sell like posters and stuff of this. It's I don't know. It was just very different, and that was very Sega like, very Genesis like. They always had like super cool graphics and super cool art styles because that was one of their like marketing things, was that they wanted to graphically be better than Nintendo.
Can you show them the spine right quick?
Yeah, sure. And actually, for Sega Genesis, that was kind of a special thing. Was they invested in the spine part of the cover art because they're in this like clamshell, which did a really good job of lasting over time. And they assumed that you kind of had them stacked next to each other like books, so you could see the spine and you can kind of immediately know which game that it is. And actually, like they recently came out with a Sega Genesis Classic, I think, back in 2019, like one of the little mini consoles.
Wasn't
And
it was pretty
you
good.
could literally sort it, and you could like rearrange them, as you said, to spine order. So it's a nice little throwback.
Yeah.
Streets of Rage 2, which is my personal favorite, is here. This is the cover art for that one. Another interesting artwork here. Very, very, very detailed. I mean, of course, I used to have a joke that I haven't told in a while, that like this was back in the day when the graphics on the cover looked way better than the actual game.
And
You know?
the cover, I like the first cover better. It just, I don't know, something about
Yeah.
hand drawings. The 3D figures just weren't there yet.
Well, I'm just saying, like you,
Yeah.
like let's say you got like the Predator on Nintendo, right? You would get it, and it would be a cover, it would like an HD cover of like Arnold Schwarzenegger sweating. And you'd be like, man, I'm gonna go home and put this in. I'm gonna be the Predator. You know, you'd be excited just from the cover art, and then you'd put it in, and it's like this little shrinky dink. You know, it may as well have been Hey Arnold. You know, it was stupid. And you're like nowadays, like the graphics are too good that the cover art looks bad. Like we've done like a 180.
It's like they focus really hard on her breasts.
But back in the good old days, I don't want my kids playing this. They might get aroused. Here's the inside. There's the book, which is, I guess, pretty boring. It's just a repeat of the cover art, nothing special. And then there's the upside down cartridge, also in clamshell. And then I would say the weirdest one in the series is Streets of Rage 3. Very strange introduction of new characters. We got Rue, we got Zan, Dr. Zan. Not much breast in this one. I guess maybe the HR department got involved when they did this cover. Here's the spine, kind of a boring spine. They actually they didn't even do unless I'm missing a variant, they didn't even do a color manual. They just did black and white on this one. So there was a period in time where like around that 94, 95, where the Sega Saturn, the next console was coming out. So some games even actually just came in a cardboard box, and they ditched the plastic clamshell. So when Streets of Rage 4 came out last year in 2020, it was initially released as digital. And then there was a few companies like Limited Run Games who released a special edition physical copy. And I do have that. And so what they did was they went back, they did a throwback to the Genesis clamshell design. So it's another huge clamshell thing. And it's just, I don't know, it's just super cool. Maybe it's not super cool. Maybe it's cool to virgins only, but I think it's pretty cool. And just to top it off before I get fired on this podcast, I did say I got the special edition. So let me show you the statue I got.
I wish I had like a drum roll sound effect.
Yeah, there we go.
Oh, that's nice.
So we got Blaze with a lot of breast detail. It's a little sticky on this figure. I don't know what happened. And then we got Axel here, who's doing his fireball move. And then this little thing, I don't know if you've played it, but it's a stress ball. And like this is basically how to get more life.
Yeah.
And one of the most iconic things about Streets of Rage was the music and the sound effects. And so when you would like pick up a health, it would make up this sound. It'd be like, and it was just like a really weird 16-bit sound, and it became classic over time. So
what does it sound like again?
It was like, it was all. You remember those toys that had like a long neck? I think they were called like jibber jabbers. And if you like shook them, it'd be like, it would make that type of noise. It was like if you just did that in one direction and didn't go backwards. It sounded like that.
It sounds like porn. That's what
it's a porn horn, exactly.
Yeah.
That's like when they start the scene, they're like, oh, action, and then they, start having sex. But yeah, so it's this game is a side-scrolling beat 'em up game for those who have not played before, and so basically you get to choose a few characters, very similar to like Double Dragon or Final Fight. But the thing is, like, there had been side-scroller fighters out for a while. Sega did not invent this, but what makes Streets of Rage special is like they just did everything right. It's the most fluid version of the game. It's 2-player, which is super cool. So like even though it's not an arcade port, it had that multiplayer couch co-op feeling back in the day. And of course, my personal favorite thing about it is the music.
Yes.
The
Yes, very
music comes
much.
from Yuzo Koshiro and I forget the other guy's name, but just like these incredible Japanese composers. And there's a few games from back in the day. There's this game, there's Donkey Kong. There's a few games where the composers who created the music actually had to like work really hard to compress the music to even get it to fit on the chip because it was just kind of so HD for the time. And, you know, there's like so many tracks and so much details and stuff like that. And the music that was designed for this video game was designed to be, to my knowledge, was designed to be like, hey, pretend almost that you could just listen to the music even if it didn't, you know, wasn't supposed to be background music for a video game. You know, because most people don't really think of like a video game music as something that you know, it's not like a movie soundtrack or anything with actual singers or whatever, right? But it's got a really weird like electronic and techno and dance clubby feel with a lot of the music. Um, and so, although some of it sounds, let's say, you know, 16-bit or whatever, it's pretty amazing actually.
Yeah. I meant to ask you before we started. I apologize.
Sure.
What made you choose this game?
I chose this game because I mean, I'm inevitably a giant fan. So when I said what game do I want to discuss, I did want to pick this one up because it has been consuming a good bit of my time as of last year, and I also wanted to choose it because there's tons of games out there, but again, like there's so many things that are being brought back or being remastered or whatever, and people are like messing a lot of stuff up in the process, and they're really just trying to get like younger generations or other people who didn't have the console to experience it, so that's fine. But this was 26 years later and it was a new game in the series and it's totally different developers. Like the risk is just super high that they were going to fuck it up and they did not. It's just really good. It's just it's a good game that you could play again multiplayer, you could play online, and they still retained the qualities of the originals in this one. Like it's still a very original and unique take on side scroll fighter, and also the music is amazing. And that's the thing, right? I don't really know of any side scrolling fighters in 2020, right? Like that style of gameplay is basically dead in the water. Really, like no one's making those anymore. You know, I mean, people are making fighter games like Marvel vs. Capcom or Soul Calibur or whatever, but like side scroll beat 'em up, it just seems so out of place in 2020, right? It seems like the opposite of modern. So a lot of people were worried that this was just not going to be fun or whatever. And it's modernized, it's smooth, and they kept all the things about it that made Streets of Rage Streets of Rage. So I picked four specifically because it's new and it's something that's like easy for people to obtain. If I said, hey, you know, go play Streets of Rage 1, it's like kind of hard to find that. And it wouldn't really be the same thing. And also, the Streets of Rage series, particularly the second one, represents a good, happy memory in my life, which was when I was playing those video games as a kid with my sister and my dad. And that was my first game, my first game system. And I just thought it was a good experience overall. I mean, I guess it is a timepiece technically since it was, you know, almost 30 years ago. But it's a good, simple, fun game with a lot of, you know, Easter eggs, a lot of technique, a lot of good music. And I pick four because it's something that people can actually go try out, you know, without having to buy a overpriced retro video game. Yeah.
I I the same. I enjoyed the game greatly. It's a lot of fun, guys. Make sure you pick it up. If someone was to say this game is too short, what would you tell them?
I would say, you know, when it comes to length, you know, I'm a man. I round up, if you know what I mean. And I'm just kidding. It is so it's one of those things where it could be short depending on how you play it, right? For instance, if you just play it on like easy mode or normal mode, you know, you'll be done with it pretty soon. I think this, you know, they've always had the issue of like creating a genuinely interesting storyline around what in reality is just 8 or 10 stages of, you know, moving left to right and getting through the enemies. So if you know, it's, if it has a weak point, it could be that. There's not really like a super. It's not like Skyrim, or it's not like something with a super in-depth story or plot. So you could finish it pretty quickly, and I think the developers realize that. Like at retail right now, I think it's like $30 or something. It's not like a $60 game. I'm part of a community on Facebook that's like a Streets of Rage 4 community, and that's what everyone's been saying. They're wanting more. They're wanting more. They're wanting more. And so that the thing is, the companies that made this, which is Lizard Cube and Dot Emu, like people were just so happy with what they did that they're on to doing more projects in the same similar vein. So other than some like patching or whatever, I think even recently they finally announced there might be some DLC, which is going to come up, I guess, soon on the 1 year anniversary. So if someone says that it's too short, I would say it depends how you play it. If you're not playing it on hard mode, I don't think that you're getting the full experience of that game. And if you're playing it on hard mode, unless you're just an absolute wizard, you're going to get the shit kicked out of you, and it's not going to be a quick game. Like I've owned it for a year now, and I do not have the top S rank on every stage still. It's still just a pain. But I think what I like about the game is it's fair. Like there are some games back in that day where like the mechanics struggled a lot. So regardless of how good you were or how bad you were, there would just be things in the game that made it like the controls could be wonky or made it a little difficult to like apply yourself. This game is just fair but tough, right? So if you put it on a higher difficulty, it'll definitely take longer to beat. It'll feel longer than it really is, I guess.
Nice. Can you explain to the people watching or listening um, how different it feels playing with each character?
Yeah, yeah. So I think that's one thing they've always had that in the games, but I think this game has a lot more characters. So I'd imagine it was a lot more difficult for them to come up with like how each person's going to be. So I think you said in the beginning that this is spoiler alert. So I think we can talk about everything. So
Yep.
there are uh, some base characters, and then there's unlockable characters. Right. So the base characters that you could play as are Axel, Blaze, who are the two people in the statue. And then you can choose between two new characters, which are Cherry and Floyd. And Floyd is like this big dude with a metal arm. I kind of say he's like Jax from Mortal Kombat, but just way bigger. And then Cherry is this cool chick that is like very tiny but very fast, and she's like playing a guitar and stuff. And then there's some unlockable characters, one of which is Adam, which is a throwback to the first game. This is actually his first like reappearance since the first game. So it's been 30 plus since we've been able to play as Adam. And then the other unlocks are actually retro versions of these characters. So you could like you have to unlock it, and you could play as like Streets of Rage 1 Axel, Streets of Rage 2 Axel, Streets of Rage 3, and like all the different variants of every character from every game. And it's pretty cool because there's new mechanics in this game. Like some of them have like infinity special moves, and like they don't have that for some of the retro characters because obviously they didn't develop that concept 30 years ago. And some characters can like run and others can't. So like there's a genuine strategy behind which character you're going to choose, and like what they're good for and what they suck at, you know. And so that's kind of cool. I always, that's a good thing. It's a good thing that it's not all like the same person with a different color hat or something. And you unlock characters as you go along the way. And I don't know. It's one of those things, kind of like Smash Brothers, where you would find a character and you're like, I don't know how anyone plays this character, like they suck. And then you go on YouTube and like the best person in the world plays as that character really easily, and you're like, oh, maybe I'm just an idiot. So I haven't been able to really like genuinely find a bad character. So yeah, there's definitely a wealth of people to choose from.
It's kind of like when you meet someone that like really good with Kirby and Splash Brothers. It's like,
Exactly.
really, this is the guy. This is the character that you
Yeah,
okay.
you lose to Kirby, you're like, all right, well, I guess I'm just gonna kill myself then.
Yeah, yeah. That's really how it feels, man. Um,
Game over in real life, I guess. I don't
How
want
many?
anyone knowing I lost to Kirby, so just bury me now.
That's how I felt. When it comes to the Easter eggs, how many did you spot?
Um, so in this particular game, in Streets of Rage 4, I'm qualifying Streets of Rage 4 because all of them have some type of hidden something, right? So in Streets of Rage 4, they actually have I'll categorize it as two types of Easter eggs. One are like visual homages to the previous games, and then some are actually functional Easter eggs. Uh, and this, I guess, this is a super duper spoiler, but like, um, there in as you're walking around in the game, there's objects that you could just kind of break, and then when you break them, there's either like, points there, or like the turkey, you can get health. You basically try to find items, right? And one of the items that's in certain stages is actually like a huge video arcade machine. And that's kind of a throwback to the second game because there's a stage where you're just in the arcade and there's a bunch of arcade machines. But the interesting thing is there's a new enemy character in Streets of Rage 4. It's like a cop, and so he has a taser on him. It's like one of the weapons that they use against you. And so, interestingly enough, I found this out by playing with somebody online. If after you like beat up the cop, if you take the taser and then instead of like breaking the arcade machine, if you hit the arcade machine with the taser, all of a sudden the game pauses and it like throws you back into a retro level from one of the previous games. And no matter who you're playing as, so like you could literally play as Shiva in like a Streets of Rage 2 throwback level that was not possible even in that game, right? So it's pretty interesting. Some of those I found out from playing out online, and then some of them we're actually discovering recently could have been Easter eggs that are telling the future of what this company is working on. There's a stage where it's in like the sewers, and like as you're walking around, there's paintings on the wall, and some people have like put together what some of the paintings are, and some of them are like, oh, there's a painting of Shinobi, and then there's a painting of like the Ninja Turtles, and it just the theme seems to kind of be like they were homages to older Sega games. But like literally a week ago, or maybe even this week, that company, Dynamo and I forget or Guard Crush or whatever, or Lizard Cube, they announced that they're actually going to be creating a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game. And
Wow.
so it's
Okay.
like, maybe they like left that on the wall as a secret of like, this is what we're working on next. So there's just a bunch of that stuff that like is all over the place, in every game, but it's definitely heavy in this game because I think there's a lot of throwback stuff, and that's one of the things that I think they did really well is like this is its own game. This is a new game. This isn't just like a remaster. It's not just giant throwback to the old games, but they found whatever that magic number is to be like a perfect combination of an independent video game but also like pays respects to the past and doesn't destroy like the main mechanic of the game. And that's another reason I chose it, is because I don't see this happening a lot. Like they literally took all the good parts, they improvised, and it's like, oh, you know what? Yeah, this is the future of this game. It was a feature that I don't think a lot of people saw. There were rumors around when the N64 came out that was going to be the first time Streets of Rage was going to have a fully like 3D, fat polygon based version of the game. And I remember people were super pissed because it just looked stupid. It was like back in the early days of like Bomberman 64 and stuff, where everything just it looked awful. And so people were really mad, and I think people got hung up on the graphics. People got hung up on like, is it possible to do this in 3D or whatever? And I just you look at Streets of Rage 4 and it's just like, wow, they really did it. They really put this game and this type of game into the current millennia even, right? And so it's just really well done. And honestly, I would say that like you could jump into this game having never played the previous three games. I mean, you're probably gonna miss a few cool things that you'd be like, oh yeah, that's nice that that painting is on the wall. I remember that. but it's not going to take away from the core game mechanic, if that makes sense.
Yes, yes. And bringing it up to modern day, looking at the previous and then now playing the recent graphics wise, did you like the way like they gave the characters the same? I mean, of course it was pixels, but do you like the
Sure.
fact that they didn't sway away from the pixel based concept? Like every costume looks similar. Like it just looks like an up to date version. Like I think they did very well with that.
There's I say a documentary, but I think it's like an 8 minute YouTube video or something. But I was, of course, as a fan, just looking at every piece of content that they put out before the game came out. And I remember seeing a video where they were explaining the art style of this game, and so the art style outside like the physical look of it, it was also based on certain layers, right? Because it's not just side to side; you're going up and down, and they had like the graphic layer, and then they had the object layer, and then they had like weather effect layer. And so when it all comes together, it like everything just seems to pop really well, to the sense where it's like you're like, is it 2D? Is it 3D? Is it a cartoon? Or is it like it's just so fluid that it's not choppy that you just kind of forget, you're just in the game and those details become meaningless. So I do like the art style with it. To your point, it almost looks like a comic book esque. There was a game back in the day called Comics Zone on Sega Genesis that it kind of has like a very similarly like modernized HD version of those type of graphics. I think it's pretty cool. And I don't even know how they do it, but it's pretty interesting too, because again, if you play the retro characters, like they're using the exact sprites from the old game, but within the modern levels, and it's not like glitchy or like it's pretty interesting. It's literally everything that you would want in the game. Somehow they did that, and you could even go into the sound effects menu and change the soundtrack, where you could actually have the retro soundtrack playing in the game instead of the current soundtrack. You could change the sprite for the turkey health. You could make it like pizza or a bird. Like it's just little stupid things like that there's just so much attention to detail. And at least in my experience, knock on wood, again, there's been like no bugs. There's been no BS. Like it's just a nice functional. I think it's a lot for $30, and I think the other kind of cool part about it is that it's not Skyrim, right? It's not a gigantic game, right? And I would have been pissed about that when I was younger, because I wanted the 120-hour plus video games. Otherwise, I didn't feel like I got my money's worth. But like nowadays, getting older and getting fatter and dying, it's like you don't have all the time in the world to play a game or invest or to begin like a new game. You open up a game like Skyrim, it's like reading a new book. You're like, Jesus, man, I guess I'm doing this now. This is my new thing. So it's cool. You could just jump into a level real quick. There's not like significant load times. You do an online game. I don't know. I think like, does that dominate the market? No, but I think that kind of thing was missing. Maybe you could do something like that in Madden, right? I guess you could launch up a game real quick, but like, I don't know. It's a nice. There's no lack of entertainment in this game, and it kind of hits that nice like quick reward thing, which I tend to like. I guess if you're just impatient like me, it'll really be up your alley. So
Nice, nice. This I'm embarrassed to say this, but just playing it on my just playing on my computer, um, I've only played these side strollers, beat 'em ups at arcades. And the way to play it on my computer, I have an Xbox controller, but to play it
nice.
like on a home controller felt so natural. Like I was really worried that it wouldn't feel natural, but it really felt more natural than the idea of just, okay, I'm moving right and I just got to keep attacking people. It was very, very natural. And that's what I enjoyed from it. Um,
Oh yeah.
when it comes to side strollers in general, uh, do you think this could become a start of a comeback for that series of games or that genre of games?
I I think so. I think, and again, this is totally personal opinion, but like it was not the first of its kind. It's not the last of its kind. But like, to sum up everything that's amazing about this series is that even though it is amongst other competitors, Streets of Rage, kind of like to what you just said about the smoothness, they always seem to be able to say, hey, look, here's how to do this correctly. Here's the best version of this template, right? Because again, you could play tons of other games, but they're either bug ridden or like there's an obvious overpowered character and everyone chooses that guy all the time or something. But this is like the really fluid, balanced version with good music and cool stuff. And I think that's all really anyone ever wanted out of these type of genres. So will it necessarily create bring in this genre back? Maybe. I mean, I know they sold a lot of this game, and unfortunately, I do know that a significant portion of those numbers are nostalgia based. But it's, I think a lot of times in modern days, like companies come out with games that inside of that game they have certain gems that then live on even if the genre or the game doesn't. Like perfect example. Have you played the Arkham Batman series
Yeah.
on any platform? Yeah. So even since the first one, Arkham Asylum, right? They have that fighting mechanic, the way that you fight with the enemies. It was new and it came out for that game, and it was a very interesting way of like, okay, so here's how to avoid taking damage and here's how you hit people. And they did a lot with sound, right? Certain sound cues could tell you, oh, if I hear this, like I know that I killed the guy, like it's a little bit louder. It was very like cinematic. It was very cinematic, but it was functional. It wasn't like garbage. It was like literally watching the movie. And so that fighting style is actually in the new Spider-Man games for PlayStation, right? They've openly and honestly said like, yeah, we just took it, like because like there's no reason to reinvent that. That's so awesome, and it just lends itself really well to a modern style game, And Spider-Man, for example, I mean, how many Spider-Man games have been out over the past 30 years? Tons, right? And really since the GameCube era, like when there were good looking 3D models, they're all basically the same game over and over and over again, right? Spider-Man hasn't changed. He's still Spider-Man, right? And so, yeah, whether it necessarily inspires a full genre to come back, I don't know. I mean, if any game of the genre could, I believe it's Streets of Rage 4. But even if it doesn't, like I said, this company, these entities and the musical composers, I think they're going to be on to bigger and better things. So at least some of these nuggets and gems that they have, if not an entire game, will show up in other games and really just make gaming more fun and a lot more smooth on modern platforms.
Nice. Um, what games do you think Street of Rage has influenced?
Mm.
The only, and like I said, I'm not big on these games. The only one
Sure.
from the outside looking in, I would think, and I'm actually am going to play it after playing this game. I definitely want to play Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Like I think
Yeah,
that
yeah.
is a
I did
big
not get a chance
influence.
to play that, but someone had said it is very Streets of Rage like. I think I don't know the names off the top of my head, but I know musically it's inspired a lot of games, and not necessarily to cop the same music style, but to compose in such a way that they did for this game, where it's like, yes, this music supplements the video game, but also like you could listen to this while you're jogging, and it's not really a video game; it's just good music. Which okay, maybe that's not gameplay, but I know that that's inspired a lot of people. I think maybe there's a few games that some of the fighting style has inspired that's maybe not in a side scroller, but I know like Virtua Fighter back in the day on the Saturn. I mean, I know it's 1v1 fighting, but just maybe like character design and really like what their special abilities are and stuff like that. I forget the side scrollers that came out after it. Like I said, it was truly late to the game, so I don't know if there's any direct inspiration after it, but I don't know. I still think it's relatively unique for what it presents. This game to me is kind of like a Honeycrisp apple. You familiar with Honeycrisp apples?
Yes.
It's like just when you thought there aren't enough fucking apples, another one comes out, right? There's like 90 types of apples, right? And the funny part is like the first apple I ever had was Red Delicious, which what a shitty name because it's the worst one. Like they clearly named that one first, and then better ones came out, and they're like, "Fuck, how do we rectify this problem?"
I
But
thought
so like
somebody had a sense of humor.
exactly, I was pretty settled on Gala apples, and I think they're still one of my favorites. So I was like, "Wow, this is great." And then like I don't know, a few years ago, I was introduced to a Honeycrisp apple, And it was kind of like Streets of Rage because you're just like, we don't need this. Like we already have this. And then you take a bite and you're like, holy shit, we need this. Print millions of them. This is the new standard for whatever it is that it represents. So it's almost like telling someone, don't reinvent the wheel, and then they come out with a better wheel, and it's like, all right, well, in that case, we can make an exception. So that's the sweet spot that this game continues to hit for me.
Um, how strong do you feel the story is?
For Streets of Rage 4, or just for any of them in general?
Just for four.
I think the story for 4, um, I think it could arguably be the weakest element in the game, because inevitably, as long as they kept it, similar in terms of like how the game progresses, you're going from stage 1 to stage 2 to stage, fill in the blank. And so at some parts it does feel like, the cutscenes in between the story are just there because if they just straight up said, okay, here's stage 3, it would have seemed there may have been a few plot holes. But it is the same to the old games in terms of how the story is presented, right? It is stage, story, stage, story, stage, story. Which, depending on who you are, you might like that, you might dislike that, right? There's a lot of games where there's like in-game dialogue boxes, some of the old RPGs. Some people find that annoying, but for this type of game, I mean, it hasn't deviated that much from that style. Me personally, I think that if there was a Streets of Rage 5, that we're going to get a completely different Streets of Rage. And all over the place, like story-wise. I think this game, first of all, no one saw this coming, right? This is 20 plus years later. Everyone who is a fan of the series just loved the old series, and we thought it was over with. So the fact that they came out with this, I think they wanted to earn everybody's respect and show what could be. Like, hey, look, it's possible to do the Streets of Rage thing on a modern gaming console well. And so I think they have a lot of new stuff, but they kept a lot of things, the good things, I think, relatively the same. And so, yeah, even on the old games, I would say the story is not like an amazing story that's going to blow anybody's mind. It's not like BioShock or, The Last of Us or whatever. So I think if we were to get a Streets of Rage 5, I think that they're going to take in a completely different direction and potentially a way more involved storyline. But yeah, I would say the story, this is poor for sales, I guess, but I would say the story is not arguably the strongest point of the game.
Okay.
I would say this, for Streets of Rage 4 specifically, for the story part, for the cutscenes and for that stuff, you do not need to play the old games. I don't think you're going to miss anything. So
Nice. I would agree with that. They definitely made it its own story, in my opinion.
totally.
So 1 through 10, what would you give this game?
I gotta be the worst person to ask because there's I don't know how many numbers there are, but there's gonna be a few numbers in there that are just because I'm a fan, which is not really that fair, right?
Buddy, you're looking at a guy that gave Black Panther a 10 because I'm black. Go ahead.
There you go. Hey, I give it a 10 too. I mean, out of 20, but that's neither here nor there. No, I'm just kidding. I thought it was okay. Did you quick aside? Did you read Black Panther by any chance?
After the movie, had no idea what the character was before. I mean, I knew of the character because of Marvel TV shows, but like I never like. By that one point, I was not in the comic books.
Okay, because the little that I read, I don't remember him getting his ass kicked as much as he did in the movie, but maybe that was for cinematic effect. I remember Black Panther being a character that just no one could really defeat. But anyway, so out of 10, first of all, this isn't me, but I believe IGN and it like Kotaku, I think, gave it a 9 or an 8 or something. I'll give it an 8. I'll give it an 8 out of 10 for a $30 game for sure. Because again, if you're looking for a super duper story, it's a little weak. And if you're looking for a game that's gonna last you, tons of hours. It's not. So I think objectively those were two places that you can knock points off. And again, you can elongate it by saying I'm going to try to get a perfect rank in every stage, and it will take you forever to do. And you're probably going to want to find a friend. But no, I mean it's smooth. There's been one update. There's only been one update, and the game is not broken. They did an update because fan requests. That's another thing that makes modern games so cool is there's a community for this on Facebook, and the developers are in the community. And so they listen to us bitching about every last thing in the world, and they literally address certain things like, oh, I wish this character would be a little faster, or oh, I wish this guy could jump or whatever. And so yeah, there hasn't really been many bug fixes or updates at all. Like it's just a finished game, which I don't know if that holds value to anybody else,
It does to me.
but to me,
After playing Cyberpunk, man, this was a great. This was so
Cyberpunk,
refreshing.
yeah.
It was so refreshing. After playing Cyberpunk, this game was so refreshing, man. Like to go from like my car just getting stuck every mission to a game where everything just flowed smooth. I was so happy to play it.
It's almost like, oh yeah, I'm playing video games again. I forgot what that felt like, and it's, I don't know, dude. It's just like I can't call out any consoles specifically because they're all guilty of this, but the quicker I can just that's a cool part about the retro stuff, right? There's no internet. You just plug it in and you're immediately playing the game, and it's, I don't know, that got lost over the years, that's not it's possible now, but that's not the norm anymore, right? The norm is you get excited and you go to GameStop for like the night before for the midnight release of your video game, let's say Call of Duty, and then you get home, right, and you unpackage it, and like that's as new as the game could be. It can't be any newer unless you worked for the company, you got like an early release. You go home and you pop it in, there's an update. It's like, the fuck do you mean update? Like this literally just came out. Like what, did they push an update while I was driving home from the store? Like what do you mean update? And it's $60, man. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not a cheap thing. And so you go put it in, and it's really only recently that like fiber internet has become relatively available for most people, but these updates are like, I don't know, 60 gigabytes. So I'll be like excited to play the game, and then I'll get home and it'll be like 60 gigs. I was like, well, I guess I'm just gonna go to bed and play tomorrow. Like, what the fuck, man? I guess I'll go do laundry in the meantime and then forget about it or something. I hate updates, dude. I get it. We got to stay on the latest and greatest, but Jesus,
I have a love-hate relationship when it comes to midnight releases. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm a computer gamer now. I love the
Sure.
fact that like I can just pre-buy a game, I already have it downloaded to my computer. I can just play it the day of. I love that. But at the same time, I remember waiting in line for Halo
Oh yeah.
3.
Oh
And it
yeah.
was just like it just felt like a community. It felt like a family. Like we were
It
all
was.
just a bunch of virgins with our Xbox shirts on, just looking weird. There's that one girl everybody's scared to talk to, and we were
She's in the
just
middle of the line. We're all just like sweating. Like, what's your name?
yeah, we were just all getting our early creep years in.
That was 2 weeks ago, Mike. What are you talking about?
Felt like it, man. Feels like it.
I miss it, man. It's weird because a lot of people would say that growing up. They're like, we wish, there needs to be more women in the video game community. And I would remember, and I was like, yeah, I agree. I don't like, I am also a direct benefactor of more women in the gaming community, because yeah, otherwise it's just us in our sweaty shirts waiting in line to buy this stupid disc. But I miss it, man. I really do. I said midnight releases, but that doesn't really even exist anymore. I actually have 3 friends that I could name off the top of my head that I've met from Call of Duty 3 or no, Call of Duty Black Ops midnight release in Concord Mills in the mall. And they work for, or the one of them works for AMC Theaters, and we're still friends. And we see movies and stuff like that. And so yeah, like it wasn't just a community, but like I still actively talk to people that I met day one from there. So it is definitely, I mean, I don't know how a midnight release would go during quarantine. I guess it would be the same thing, but with 6 feet or whatever. But it was kind of like a Black Friday thing minus like the tents and stuff like that. and it was fun. And have you been to Concord Mills
Yeah.
in North Carolina? So
Yeah.
it's like for those of you who haven't, it's like it's a giant mall. It's like a mile long, and every store ever and every restaurant ever is in there. And so the GameStop that's in there, when they did do midnight releases for certain major games like Halo or Call of Duty or just big games, Gears of War or whatever, like they would actually throw parties, right? They would bring Hooters girls. They brought Hooters girls that were dressed in like camo for the Call of Duty release. They had like dog tags and like merch to give out. And then they would also have a back room where they would set up monitors and stuff where they would actually let us like play the game before it came out, just like on a local server and stuff. Like it was exciting, man. It was a really cool thing. And they did it like way better than just staying in line. Like you said, it was a community. You could play things. Like it was like, I don't know, the cream of the crop for GameStop. It was fun.
It was nothing that in Columbia. It was literally wait outside, make sure you bring your folding chairs, and we'll open this door at 12. Like it was
I've been there. I've been there. I've done that. I mean, depending on the game, I'll still do that. Or if it's like a console or something. We walked by a place. A good buddy of mine, Brian Penn, you might know him, is also a very funny comedian. Him and I were walking around the other day. We walked past a place in Charlotte that used to be an open mic that we went to. And I was like, it's funny is the last time I was at that open mic was in March of 2017. And he's like, why do you remember that? That's like so random. I was like, I remember it because I had to leave immediately to go to GameStop for the midnight release for the Nintendo Switch, which I got one. I literally have like a day one Switch. He's like, oh, that's random. I was like, that's the last midnight release I remember going to, you know, and that was exciting. We all like linked up and swapped friend codes and stuff. It was fun, man. It's just nice to see like, other losers in the world. It's nice to see like future rapists and like get to know them, before they become the
no.
villain.
I don't know. I don't know, Evan. I don't know.
I mean, no, that's not. I meant future creators and
Oh yeah,
designers and yeah. I think the camera cut out. I don't know what
yeah.
happened.
Twitch streamers. Yeah. Uh,
Exactly. Nintendo Twitch. That's right.
does your controller have that drift thing?
So, all right. So here's the thing. Luckily I have this right next to me. I play with a Pro controller.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
I know that sounds like a brag or maybe a commercial, like you got to play with it. But
It's a
the
good
thing is,
flex.
yeah, it is. It is a flex. But I weirdly enough, although the Switch's thing is that it's portable, I primarily play it in docked mode on the TV, and I have played it portably. I've played it on airplanes, which is super cool, and I'm blown away by what they've done. But I can't tell, other than Mario Party, because of like the gyro or whatever. I don't really use the Joy Cons portably all that much. Um, I'm impressed with how much technology they could fit in that small size because it's everything, man. It's like Bluetooth, it's NFC, it's wire. I mean, it's pretty incredible. But I have not experienced the drift problem. Probably like it probably exists in my controller. I just don't use them, so I don't know about it. And that's the thing is, I'm still stuck in the traditional way of just sitting there playing a game. Like I remember when Kinect came out, Xbox Kinect. They're like, yeah, you could like, play Just Dance and you can actually dance. And I'm like, cool, I don't give a shit. I'm not going to do that. So like, and it's amazing tech and it's fun and a lot of people do this, but I'm still just like lazy controller, play the game. And to be honest, certain games like Streets of Rage, like I don't like when you have to actually really focus and play hard and be good. I wouldn't be able to do that with a Joy-Con. Some people do, but it's just like, you got to have that feeling where you're truly locked into the controller because it's not like I'm not playing it on PC. Right, so some people playing it on PC, maybe it's a lot more fluid because they got the keys right in front of them. But I have always been a console guy for games because I'm a firm believer that like the controller makes a lot of the experience, which is a really poor thought, especially since I'm a programmer. It's the opposite of the way that I should think. I think obviously PC games, no holds bar. They look better, they run better. I mean, there's no debate. They're obviously, the price of the Nintendo Switch is half the price of a graphics card, right? So what do you expect? But the controllers are really what bring back like tactile memories for me, you know. And arguably, a lot of people hate that Sega Genesis controller, but for Streets of Rage games in general, like it makes sense. I actually switched. I'll show you a little story. So you got your buttons here, like in the typical cross. And so back on the Genesis controller, which I have one, I can go grab, but it was literally like horizontally A, B, C, right in order. So like you would just have to move your thumb like this. There was no up, down, left, right, it's just like this. And so out of the box, there's some settings, and I actually changed the settings so that, this could be A, this could be B, and this could be C. So like I'm not even using this button. I tried to make it as close as I can to the original Genesis controller so that, it just feels fluid, which you could do that on a Joy-Con. But so I'm back to where I was when I was a kid, where it's two hands just holding it. I don't have to like look at the controller or anything like that. It's just, as you said, it's very, very fluid. So I'm pretty happy with the way things worked out. And so, I don't know, Joy-Cons. I use Joy-Cons if I have more than 3 people that I'm playing with, because you could you could turn one into a whole controller for Mario Kart and stuff like that. So
Nice. Dumb question, but I gotta ask: do you believe that this game has become a part of pop culture?
I don't know why, but for some reason I thought you were like, I gotta ask, do you believe in God? And I'm like, wait, what? It just sounded like that was what was coming next.
Not Jehovah Witness no more, man.
You're like, here we got Streets of Rage 4. God, what are your thoughts? I don't know. Is he an unlockable character? I don't know. Do I think it's influenced pop culture? I think so. It has pop culture in it. Streets of Rage 4, right? The designers of the game admitted that the one there's a stage that has these 2 like hot women with like cool modern haircuts that are the bosses, and their names are derived from like Rihanna and Beyonce.
Yep.
And actually, the one has like Rihanna's haircut. So it's there's definitely pop culture that has gone into the game. Has the game influenced pop culture? I don't know. I think it's a little bit of give and take, right? Because again, I'm not going to say that the original games invented EDM or techno or anything like that, but they do have music that some of that stuff sounds like that today now, right? So I'm sure if you go to any composers of EDM or techno or trance even, they would maybe cite the game as a reference of like, yeah, some of that video game stuff was really cool. If you listen to the Streets of Rage 4 soundtrack, again, it's the same. They accomplish the same thing where it's just good music, but it is relevant and I think modern to pop culture. It sounds amazing, and it's club music, and it's just very cool, very electronic. Has this influenced pop culture? I mean, I do have a few T-shirts with it on it, and every single time I wear the T-shirt, like someone says, "Hey, nice shirt." There's always someone that knows about this game. 90% of the people are walking around wondering why, what the hell I'm wearing, but there's always someone that knows what it is. So I don't know if it's influenced pop culture directly, but there's influences, all over the place. I guess that would have, if there's ever a Streets of Rage movie, I think that's what we can officially conclude. It's had an impact, a high enough impact on society, right? It's not quite Power Rangers just yet, right? So.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on a video game review. Is anything you'd like to say to your fans?
Yeah. Hey, Mom. Hey, Dad. That's it.
No. Where can they follow you?
No, anything I'd like to say to fans? I don't know. I mean, I guess we're in pandemic still, right? I think they say that we're supposed to get out somehow conveniently enough on the 4th of July. I don't know how they time that, but we still have time to play video games and get fat while no one's looking. So, just relax, play some games, play with yourself. That didn't sound right. Play a video game with yourself. or play it with others. It's a good game. Again, you could do what they call couch co-op, right? Two people can sit there, hopefully with masks on, somehow 6 feet apart, and play the same game. Or you could play online with Streets of Rage 4. And if you don't like anything that I had to say, just go like play a different game. But like nonetheless, play a game. Save gas, right? You don't have to shower, you don't have to drive. Games are good. They say games are violent, and they inspire people to kill everybody. And I don't know. I've been playing games for 30 years. I haven't killed anybody. Um, Maybe I'm missing out. I don't know, but I'm just getting points. That's all I'm doing. I'm just getting ranks and scores and points, uh, and no women. So yeah, definitely go ahead and play a video game. You know what else is cool about video games? You can eat food while you're doing it. I got to tell you, one of my favorite life experiences, proof, evidence that I'm just a slob and that we are in modern times, is I'll be playing a video game and I'll hear the doorbell, and the doorbell is like Uber Eats or DoorDash with my food. And then my fat, slobby caveman ass will come to the door in like just underwear and go grab my food. It'll just be me, underwear, and I'll have like the controller and my headset on. And they know exactly what I'm doing. And they don't even mind. They're like, yeah, I was doing that this morning before I went to this job today. So I could relate to that guy. So I feel like a little caveman, like, oh, food, and then close the door and go back, and you just don't have to do anything, man. There's no dress code, no one gets hurt. It's fun, man. It's really fun.
It is very peaceful. One thing I learned about video games, no matter how violent the game is, while I'm playing, I'm always at peace. I can always say that.
I can't say that for sure. So okay, all right, fine. Video games, they do inspire some. I've broken a few controllers before in my life. I've never like broken people, but I've definitely been like mentally stimulated and challenged so much by video games that I've just thrown controllers before.
I also play on easy, so maybe that's it.
Exactly. Streets of Rage can do that to you, but I think it's worth it. I don't break controllers anymore though. These controllers are like $70 nowadays, so I'm very very calm and
Going by the name, I'm not surprised.
exactly. I know I'm a huge advocate for video games. I think they are also still inevitably really good motor skill training. So some would argue that you're going to fry like a kid's brain if they start out playing early, and that I guess maybe there's some truth to that. But yeah, that was one thing that I never remember doing. I never remember being one of those people who had to like look at the controller and then look up and piece it together. I don't know. They always just made sense. Whoever designed these controllers, with the exception of the Nintendo 64 controller, did a good job, and it's good eye-hand coordination, and that does translate to other things, right? If you ever become a drummer, like you need to do that. If you ever become a guitar player, you need to do that. Driving, you need to do that. I mean, don't play video games while you're driving. That's not what I'm saying, unless you're like the passenger or something. But no, it's a cool thing. As you said, it is a community. Nowadays, people are comparing systems. That's like the cool new flex. Like, oh, I got a PlayStation, I got an Xbox. Do whatever you want. Just invest in the games. And I will say something. I'll end it with saying this. This is something that I would not have said 10 years ago, because my life was totally different. But when you do go and play video games after watching this PoppinCulture video, go and pick out a video game that has a nice single player story and just completely ignore multiplayer. Streets of Rage, again, it's got one. It's not the strongest, but go find something that is like a dedicated single player game, whatever platform, right? PlayStation, Nintendo, Game Boy, Game Girl, whatever gender console that you have. Just go pick up a game that's single player story and forget about multiplayer and treat it like a book or like a new CD that you just bought, and just indulge in it. Maybe even get a pair of headphones so all you can hear is the game. And I got to tell you, man, it's magical. What you're playing is like thousands of people's jobs, right? What you're playing is the product of musical composers, artistic directors, screenplay directors, programmers, managers who manage the programmers. It's just it's like a tattoo. It's somebody's job. maybe you don't like it at first, but like a lot goes into it, and I promise you'll get lost in it. And don't just ignore multiplayer for a second. Don't worry about connecting and establishing. If you wanted to hang out with people, that's why you go outside, right? You came inside because you wanted some time to yourself. So go indulge in a video game like it's a book or fine wine, um, and hopefully you'll have a good experience.
That was beautiful, man. That was
And if
beautiful.
not, blame Michael Garrick from the PoppinCulture podcast because it's his fault.
Oh man, I'll take the blame. That was beautiful. I second that. Definitely get together and play a single player game. You'll definitely enjoy it.
What's cool about Michael? Michael single-handedly destroys many claims of video game haters, which is if you play video games, you'll become fat. But I mean, I'm not a good spokesperson, but look at Michael. He plays video games. This dude he looks like T'Challa, man. I mean, look at him. And he's
I
good at the games, I understand. He's not even like a casual gamer. Like he plays games and he looks good. I mean, he's got a cool haircut. Like
appreciate it.
you could be a cool normal person and still play video
Normal.
games. Yeah, it's not gonna ruin your life.
I
Maybe
hear you,
the
bro.
VR headset, that might ruin your life, but the traditional games, you'll be fine.
I appreciate it, brother.
Do a
Uh,
flex real quick. Do like a muscle. Yeah, I mean, look at that, man. I don't
I
want to
hear
mess with this guy. I mean,
no,
that's from all the video games.
that's hilarious, man. Uh, but thank you so much. Let them know where they can follow you on social media.
Sure. You could follow me on Facebook, which I think back in the day we'd have to like share our page name, which I think mine is like Evan.Shitfield. But you just search my name now and it comes up. I don't think we need to do that anymore. And then when the world stops ending, I still reside in Charlotte, North Carolina. So if I'm in the area, come out to a comedy show or a music show or something. And hopefully, if I'm in Mike's area, you could see us both. Maybe we could do like a competitive video game day one day. PoppinCulture presents free arcade day at Mike's house or something like that.
Oh yeah, definitely, man. When everything opens back up, man, I'll definitely let you know if you want to come down. I know they still do like Smash tournaments. Yeah, I don't know
Nice.
if you're good at the game or not. Like, I do
I,
okay.
I'm re- I'm really good until I enter those tournaments, and then I'm like, oh, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I thought I was good, and then I get there, I'm like, yeah, maybe those
Bro,
15 years are a waste of time.
it's so humbling, man.
I can confidently tell you, I am good depending on the game. If we're playing melee, I have a chance at winning. If we're
Okay,
playing some of the new games, I'm okay. You know.
nice, nice. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching and have an amazing day.